Okay, now I'd like to share some scripture with you. 2 Corinthians 9:12 says, "This service that you perform is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but is also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God." Psalms 107, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, his love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story, those who redeemed from the hand of the foe, those who gathered from the lands from the east and from the west." John 19, "The man who saw it has given testimony, and his testimony is true. We know that he tells the truth, and he testifies that you also may believe." Okay, we're going to get this testimonial thing on the way. Lisa, you want to come on up?
Thank you for coming tonight. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this night for quite a while. I had asked Calvin if we could have a testimony night because people sometimes come to Jesus in different ways. Church is one of them, but hearing other people's struggles and how they got through it, that really speaks to me, and it might speak to you as well. So I was grateful that he gave us this opportunity tonight. And I want to tell you that there's a couple of testimonies tonight, 4 in fact. And the first one, I was sitting next to this young lady for I usually do sit next to her, and just never realized there was a story at all until I heard it, it just kind of came forth. And I thought, wow, how many times do we sit next to our neighbors? Do we, sit next to people at work and we don't even know that they have a story, let alone ask them what it is. So when that was brought up, I just thought of her immediately, that I wanted you guys to hear her story. She gave her story freely. And she gives her skills of cooking. The thing that I remember most is the fudge. But she also gives her time even when she's tired on her feet. She works very hard during the day, and then to come and give of service to the children of the BYO family is really something that I appreciate from this speaker. So the first one is Tracy. Tracy, come on up.
I've never spoken in front of a lot of people before, so I'm a little nervous, and I have been sick most of this week and trying to work. So if I sound a little funny, it's just because I've been kind of sick. I was raised in church since I was 5. I got pregnant young, had a baby really young, got put up for adoption, went on and had 2 more kids, got married, and my husband was in the Navy, and he had gotten into drugs really bad, and the drugs ended our marriage really young. So as a young mom, and a single mom at that, I went to work, and I was working at a place where I had, my days off were rotated. So on the weekends, when I was at work, my mom would keep my 2 young children for me. I would go and take them there, put them to bed, feed them, put them to bed, and then I would go party. I would drink, and I was drinking a lot. To stay awake, I was doing speeds. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then one day, I woke up on a Sunday morning, and I went to go get dressed for work. My kids were gone. I went to go get dressed, and I went to go get dressed, and I looked at myself in the mirror and said, "What are you doing? You lost your husband over drugs. He's still out there on drugs. What are you doing to yourself and your children?" And it was almost like God just slapped me in the face, because that's what it felt like. And I could feel him in that bathroom, that small bathroom with me. It did take me a while, but I did get off of them, but I was only doing it on the weekends. So it wasn't as bad as a full-blown trying to get off of drugs. But it did take me a long time. And to this day, if I'm working a lot of hours and I'm tired, it still crosses my mind. My children are now almost 40 years old and 38, and it still is hard. They were young at that time. My daughter was probably maybe 7, 8 at the time. But it was just like God just was there. Even though I feel like I walked away, God never walked away from me. He was always beside me. And even, I was still in church at that time. I was taking my kids. My parents were taking my kids. So I was still in church, but I didn't feel like I was there. I was just playing church. But like I said, God never walked away from me. He was always there for me. And now, my children are ministers. They work in the children's ministry. My son does security. We all go to Real Life. Lisa asked me to figure out, or to say why I do the ministries I do. I thought about it and I thought, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. It's always been my parents. I was a deacon's kid. And my parents always served in the church. From the time I was little, that's all I remember is my parents serving in the church. And so I guess I grew up just into that role, serving. But it means a lot to me to serve these kids. I've kind of stepped back a little bit from serving a little bit, only because I had taken 4 years out of serving to take care of my dad. But to see him, even towards the end, serving God, that means a lot. And I was going to say, at the very beginning of that story, of my testimony with my husband and losing him, 31 years later, we're married. And we're both clean and sober.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. I know it took a lot of courage to get up here and do that. The next speakers are going to come up together, and I had chosen one of them because I had never heard her version of the story. Calvin has told snippets, but it interested me to see what the story was from her own perspective. And because when I look at this lady, I see God. I see an aura that you'll see. She glows. So she serves very well here. She serves the church. Her job is to clean the church, so that's service in itself. But also she serves donuts in the morning. If somebody needs something, she's right there to step up and say she'll help. And that's the first speaker. So then the next one of the two, I was drawn to his story because, like so many others, he's been down a hard road, and he had God in his life, but even that didn't get him on the right path just right away. So I was always interested to know, what is your story? Because he's told it, a little bit at a time as I've learned to know him, but I want to hear the whole story. And what really interested me is that I love how he is able to allow others to grow at their own pace. This in itself is very difficult, at least for me. I want people to grow at my pace. Why didn't you do it yesterday? Why aren't you there now? This man is very, very patient, and just to hear him even, not reprimand someone, but to say, it's okay to slow down, it's okay to grow at your own pace, and allow that in people that he loves. I really do appreciate that. So our next two speakers are Karen and Tom.
No. I love you too. Okay, hi everybody, I'm Karen. Okay, when Lisa asked me to do this, it was actually a couple months ago, and I was on fire then. And then you know what happens, the devil gets a hold of you and tries to talk out of it, but I've known Calvin all my life. We grew up next door to each other, running around the north end, and several years passed and we kind of separated and went our own ways. And then in 2011, I ran into him again, and I was in a really bad spot. I had just gotten a divorce after 20 years. I was hurt, betrayed, and I drank a lot and I was doing a lot of drugs. And lo and behold, I ran into him in a bar. And some of you have heard him talk about this person that was in this bar, tore up from the floor up, come and get her. That was me. He walked in and, Calvin's always had my back. I trust him. I trust him with everything. So I knew when I saw him that everything was going to be okay. We went out to his truck, and he prayed with me. Some people say, don't, beer in hand and all that. Well, he prayed with me. And we talked, and several weeks had passed, and, we were still talking. And at that time, he had a 12-week program starting here at the church. And he said, you ought to try it. It's an AA program. And so I thought, no, I don't need that. No, I got this. I got this. So that had passed, and the night before the program started, I called him. And I came the next day with the intention of coming to the program and not coming to church. I knew who God was, but I didn't know him. And he said, if you stay, I'll buy you lunch. I thought, hey, free lunch. So I stayed. I never left. That Sunday, from 2011 on, I stayed. And it was just it wasn't an easy thing, but I stayed, and I had a lot of stuff that I had to deal with, and through that, you learn that you're worth it. So we left here one day, and we were all going up here to Taipan, and that's when I asked Christ into my life. In Calvin's truck, in the parking lot of Taipan restaurant, before we went in to eat buffet. And he said, are you ready? I said, yeah, I'm ready. And so things started to change, and in a good way. But as I say, the devil's losing a client, and so he's going to try to get back in. And so there were times where he did get in, but I got back on my feet. And so to wrap it all up, I'm not as anxious. I'm not as PO'd as I was in the beginning. There is no anxiety anymore. There is no anger. I have comfort in my home. I have children that have noticed a change in me. When I was doing all the drinking and the drugging, I had seen a pattern that I had seen the same pattern on my kids as I had in myself, and I knew that that wasn't a good thing. So for them and for me, that was when I decided that things would change. But I went from the bottom of the bottle to the foot of the cross, and when I literally walked up there, and it wasn't in this building when I did it, it was over here, and I knelt down, I felt that urge, those desires, those things leave me at that time when I asked God, take this from me. I cannot do this on my own. And he took that. And my life is not all rosy and sweet. Everybody has their days. But I find through serving the church, I'm in this building or that building every day, every Sunday. I find that keeps me honest. It also keeps me, you do what you say you're going to do, and it keeps me committed. But also too, I get to see the people that I made friends with, and the lives that have changed my life they opened up their heart, for me. So, and now I'm just aimlessly rambling on, so I'm going to end this. But yeah, and then, I forgot about you, I'm sorry. So, I met my husband Tom through Calvin too, unexpectedly. We were not looking for one another, we just happened to find one another, and he's actually part of the reason why I served some of the donuts, because he was the coffee person, and so who doesn't need a donut person if they're a coffee person? So we make an awesome team, but I'll let him take over.
So, I'm Tom of the Tom and Karen. I've shared, like Lisa said, parts of my story, but I guess to do a general overview of I've spoke with in recovery groups of what it was like, and it's not I don't want to do a war story or things like that. We've all had our thing, but so a brief synopsis. Growing up, I never met my dad till I was 14. Growing up, I dealt with sexual abuse towards me and my sister. My mom was into witchcraft and had practiced that. I can remember some of it back in my being 4 or 5 years old. And then somewhere along the line, my mom found, she became a Jehovah's Witness. And even though she had what you would think would be God in her life, because Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a bit askew from maybe some normal beliefs, that they do believe in the same God we believe in. They just have a different version or a different translation of the same Bible that we read. But even though she became a Jehovah's Witness, I saw a very still ungodly lifestyle from my mom. And so I don't think I've never not believed in God, but he was never a part of my life. And I can't remember a time in my life where I didn't at least acknowledge that I was created. I don't believe in evolution, obviously, now and stuff. So from that kind of background, I dealt with a 23-year drug addiction, problems with pornography, everything that goes along with that I only can speak for guys, but I know if you're in that lifestyle, it's just one of the things we deal with. Did not have good relationships, hard to accept any kind of father figure, have not had one in my life, even till this day. I met my dad when I was 14, I haven't seen him since I was 16. So my father is my heavenly father, and we're building a relationship even to this day. So through 23 years of addiction, I was to a point of homelessness, holding a sign on the side of the road for money. I went I thought as far down as I could. I ended up coming out from the West Coast out here in 2007, and God has a unique sense of humor. But I came halfway across this country on a whim, and this is where things changed for me. 3 months after being here, I had gotten a job, and I found myself in the same routine that I always had. You get a job, you get money. Money was a trigger. So 3 months after being here on January 5th of 2008, I was sitting at the Quest Motel on the side of a bed, and I finally broke down. And I mean, I broke down pretty good, and I asked God for help. And I think for the first time in my life, was honest about that help I needed and felt it, but I was just so tired of just the same thing over and over and over again. So with that, the next day I went through the Triangle Center. They got me detox, and after detox, they sent me over to the Salvation Army, ARC. So that's where my journey with accepting Christ began, because I was ready for anything different, anything that would change where I was. And so there I made a commitment, first of all to myself, that I would do whatever they told me to do. It was a long program, 6-month program. Obviously I had nowhere to go, and so I was going to do whatever they said. I had a great counselor there, and he had, brought out a few things, points. It says, okay, if you're going to do this, then you need to start by stopping running and turn around and look at your past. So that was kind of my discovery that I needed something different in my life. I'm going to share a story of one of the things that helped me make the decision. One of the things I did when I stayed there at the Salvation Army, I was getting near graduation, and I had contacted the state of Washington. I have 2 grown sons that I had not seen, and still to this day haven't seen, since they were 2.5 years old and 1 year old. And now they're both grown men with kids of their own, in 30 and 26. But so I called the state of Washington and asked them, or I didn't ask them, but I told them, I said, this is where I'm at, and I know if I go get a job, you're going to garnish my wages for child support, and I've been running, and this is where I'm at. I want to take care of it. I was trying to stop running and look at the train wreck behind me. And so the lady that was the caseworker for my kids, she goes, well, we were kind of wondering where you've been. And I gave her a brief synopsis I said, I'm a drug addict. And I says, I do what drug addicts do. I dodge you. And I did that, up until that point. And she said, well, write down where you've been, all the times you've been incarcerated, because any time I've been incarcerated, they could go ahead and reduce the amount of child support I owed. I told them where I was going to be working, because I had gotten a job, and that was that. So I expected to be garnished, but at a pace that I could handle and be able to take care of my my responsibilities. And then God happened. I started working at CCB Credit Services when I was still through about my 6th, 7th month there at the ARC, and I got a letter from the state of Washington, and it was, I thought it was my order, what they were going to garnish me with and things like that. And it was to a degree, but I started reading the letter, and they had determined, because my kids were grown and that I had contacted them, they sat and I guess they had a discussion, but the letter stated that they were gonna, they wiped out $45,000 of my debt to them. They said, we could do this debt whatever we want, and we want to give you a chance to try to live a life. They asked me to pay 2 payments of $50, and then we would be even. So I was granted, or they expunged, I don't know if that's the right word, but $45,000 for me, which at the time, even then I knew that was God. There was no way a city or state entity is just going to write off money when they know they have you in their crosshairs, but they did. So based on that, it really, God just, he just showed himself. I did such a little of the right thing and got such a huge reward out of it. My decision then was concreted in trying to follow God's path. I went to get baptized, and Clint Cook, who some of you know is pastor here at Real Life, when we were in this building, there used to be 2 services, but there was about a 2.5-hour gap between the services, so he would drive to the ARC and meet guys that were coming out of church on Sunday morning and give them a ride up here, anybody that wanted to come. And so that's when I started coming here 11 years ago. I asked to get baptized. They let me get baptized. I have been be it from being on vacation, a constant fixture here for the last 11 years. And then I started asking what I could do to help. You know, I was given a gift, and I wanted to do something, and I had been going through the recovery program, and a huge thing in the recovery program is service work. And so I wanted to know what could I do, and Calvin had came and spoke at the ARC when I was there, and that's how I knew who he was. Well, when I came here, him and Robin were sitting out front there, and so I asked him to be my sponsor in recovery. And he agreed to that. And the first thing he did is he gave me service work, which was to take over Robin's job of making the toast and the coffee here. That was 11 years ago, and I still do that every week. And I'm not going to give it up just because I think Karen said it pretty good. It keeps me honest. It keeps me committed to something. And I've never done anything for 11 years in a row in my life, ever, good or bad, you know. So, you know, the service work, the more I did, the more I became part of God's family. And then, you know, and it hasn't been rosy. It's been a struggle. I have a struggle with authority. I have a struggle with somebody saying that they love me and this is what's best for me. And so, but it's been good. Marriage, job now, a life that is anxiety-free. It drives me to continue to do service work, becoming closer, to try to build that relationship with God, and that's where I find it here. And it just changed how I view others, how I view myself, how I view life, and so, anyway, but that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom and Karen. That was wonderful. Thank you both. The next speaker, I actually met on a baseball field many, many moons ago. This young man was a baseball player and played ball with my brother. And I hadn't seen or heard of him since that time. But when I came to church here, I knew there weren't too many people with the same name. So I asked him, did you play baseball way back when on the Hub Clothiers? And he said, well, yes. And the next time that I saw him, he brought a picture, and there was my brother, and there he was as well. So that was pretty cool. The one thing that stood out is his love of children. This man has no judgment, or at least I've never seen any. He likes to sing. And he serves without a second thought. I even struggle today, thinking, well, how much time is that going to take me? Or what do I have to put into it? Of course I want to serve, but there's always that, well, not with this gentleman. He just gets up and does it. He does it every Sunday. He helps over at the other church. He helps here on Saturday nights. And if you happen to have a baby, you might find that child in his arms. Our next speaker is Patrick Zillion.
Thank you for that pretty picture. I'm getting ready to slap that thing up for you. Man, I'm gonna start crying right off the bat. But I told Pastor Calvin, I said, I'm going to cry. He said, I know, that's why I'm putting you up there. And he just texted me. I'm serious. Right when I sat back in that chair, he must have knew I was coming up. So well, I'm going to thank him for giving me this opportunity. Thank y'all for listening. I was raised in church. Let me get myself and stop crying here. I can't do that. I started when I was about, 8 or 9 years old. A lady named Audrey Higginbotham used to come pick me up and take me to a little church over on the corner of Milton and Carpenter Street. And, I got my dad going. Well, my dad was a wild one, and he had been divorced, and, my dad used to carry pot in his boot. Watched him and my uncles do mescaline and stuff when I was a little kid. I'm not laughing because it's funny, it's just that's stuff I saw. And they were wild, man. But my dad found the Lord, and like that, he changed. He got involved in that church, and I went to church 3 times